Yeah, of course. All right, thank you, Mariam. I'll go ahead and share my screen. Oh, if you could just give me permission to share my screen real fast. There we go. Perfect. All right, everybody. Can you all see my screen? Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. So yeah, today I want to cover kind of some just set the ground on some marketing essentials for the senior care industry. And then from Mariam, she said you also wanted to talk about some caregiver retention. So the last 4 to 5 slides of this highlight some caregiver retention stuff as well. All right. And then Mariam can record this for you all as well so that y'all can view it at a later time if you need to, or pick it back up. All right. So yeah, I'm Tyler. I'm the Chief Operations Officer for Senior Care Business Advisors. We're a consulting firm that deals only with home care. We are former home care agency owners, and we also have a background of working with WellSky and some other agency management softwares as well. So we kind of understand the business both from the operator side as well as having that opportunity to work for WellSky and other companies like WellSky. We were able to kind of peek behind the curtain a little and understand the business from their side of their point of view as well. All right. So I wanted to start this off with why your mission, your vision, and your core values matter. So these things are all going to form the foundation of your agency's identity. They are going to communicate not only to your clients, but your caregivers, as well as your referral partners, both your agency's purpose as well as your agency's unique priorities. And one of the best books I've ever read for business, but especially since I've been in the home care space, is down here. It's called Start with Why, and it is by Simon Sinek, and he is one of my favorite authors. This book, if you guys are looking to maybe update your mission statement or really dive into why you got into the home care space in the first place, I recommend giving this book a quick read. It's a very short book, so it won't take that much time out of your daily lives. Um, and it just helps set the story for why you're going to keep doing this and helping you understand what your reasons are for serving the senior care space. So this one is on crafting your mission statement. So really, it's basically just defining what your home care agency does and why your agency exists. Um, One highlight I want to provide here: make sure that you're including your mission statement in your employee handbook. That way, all of your caregivers have the ability to see what your reason for being in this space is. I've thrown an example here to provide compassionate, high quality home care that empowers seniors to live independently with dignity and respect. So feel free to tweak that as you may, compare it to your own. Um, but it's just a really important thing to have. I also like for the mission statement to be displayed if you have an office space somewhere where your caregivers and anybody else that shows up in your office can see it as well. It also reminds your admin team that that is what your agency is about and it keeps it top of mind. All right. Next to a mission statement, I want to talk about your vision. So, your vision statement is where you're going to outline what are your long term goals? What are your aspirations for this business? You know, some people go into the senior care space to start a generational business they can pass down to their children and their grandchildren. You know, other people want to stay in this industry and, do it like a normal career, stay in it for 30 years, and then they'd like to find somebody else to sell it and carry on serving seniors in that community. So think about what your goals are with your individual agency um, as you're crafting your vision statement as well. So again, we've thrown a quick example together for you, to become the most trusted home care agency in our community, known for exceptional service and meaningful relationships. Um, the only other thing I'll say on this one, y'all, is home care. Some people will say senior care, some people will say personal care. So whatever state you're in, whatever terminology you've been using, that's fine to sub that for home care or personal care. There are so many synonyms for what we do in this space. The next thing we wanted to touch on here today, y'all, is your core values. So think about what principles guide your daily lives, not just within the home care space, but what are your core values as a human being? What kind of people are you wanting to draw to work to you, both as your caregivers and what kind of clients do you want to work with? You know, as hard as it is to think about this, there are going to be times when a client is not a good match for you. And I know at the beginning you want to take every single client you have, but if you have a client that is constantly disrespecting your employees or disrespecting your admin staff, that client is not good for the long term growth of your agency. It's going to, at the very least, cause your caregivers stress, but more likely, you're going to lose your caregivers and potentially even a scheduler over a client that is just constantly denigrating you. Um, there's always going to be a client that is you can't please, and that's okay. Refer them to somebody else if you need to. Um, but don't let them put your staff in a mental or physically dangerous space. Um, Now, I will caveat that with if a client has dementia, we need to have a little bit more compassion and probably speak with that client's power of attorney about ways that we can work with them and maybe mitigate the situation. Perhaps we need to try a different caregiver. Perhaps we need to put a much more experienced caregiver on the shifts that are going to occur when that patient is sundowning. So maybe we know, okay, at 4 o'clock, I got to have my best caregiver there because she's the only one tough enough to deal with this patient and not take things personally. Um, I'll give you a brief example on that. One of our clients was a Holocaust survivor. So when we sent caregivers in, we had to make sure that we sent in not only a female caregiver, but we needed to send in a non-white caregiver because she was terrified from being a little girl during the Holocaust of Caucasian people. So there are some situations like that you're going to have to, it's going to be a one-off, and you're going to really need to work with to find how you can best serve that client if it's in the realm of possibility for you guys to serve them. So sorry for that little tangent there. But again, on your core values, the big ones, think about compassion, reliability, integrity, innovation. And again, these don't have to be $3 words. They can be simple words everybody knows. You don't have to go to the thesaurus and start looking up really big words for your core values. You want them simple. You want them to mean something to everybody that sees them, whether it's your caregiver or your client, and you want to keep them memorable. Visual elements for your brand. So you may want to consider using a diagram to showcase your mission, your vision, and your core values. This can help your audience visualize the interconnected pillars of your brand. This is especially important on collateral that you are leaving behind at, say, referral sources, as well as any collateral you're leaving behind when you go to visit a prospective client in their home. You always want to leave something behind, even if they didn't sign a contract with you that day. Make sure you showcase and you tell them about your vision. Let them know, establish why you're different than the franchise down the block from you. You know, build trust with your clients and your caregivers. Set your home care agency apart. Again, I like to display my mission statement in my office. Um, and on this trust thing, I will just stop here for a second. We have a client here in Atlanta, and his previous marketer was not doing a very good job building trust with everything. And so he would say whatever he thought he had to say to get the business from a referral partner or a client, and then end up leaving things in a really bad situation because they couldn't deliver. For example, he was promising care that was outside of the home care realm. He was saying, yes, we will be happy to change catheters and things like that. So, whatever it is, never lie to your clients, never lie to your caregivers. and don't promise them care that you could not legally or safely deliver in your state. Just a little more tips on your brand recognition. Make sure you're consistent on everything you do. Use your logo, your color scheme, and your fonts consistently across all of your material, whether it's your brochures, your flyers, or even your job ads. Also, it's not just about the colors. Keep your messaging tone consistent as well in all of your everything from your job ads. You want to deliver consistency to your clients and to your caregivers every time they speak with you. All right. Now I want to talk about your target audience and key demographics to pay attention to. So the first one is age range. So we're looking for seniors or adults with disabilities, but typically our largest market are going to be seniors 70 plus. However, the first person we're going to talk to for that senior is typically going to be an adult child or an adult grandchild. So you need to make sure that your marketing materials and the way you present what's going on is something that somebody 50 to 70 is going to find relevant to them because it's going to typically fall to the oldest daughter, oldest granddaughter, just to help make the decision. Now on the other side, if it falls and there's only a man left to take care to be the decision maker about providing care for his older female relative, typically he's going to sign up for your services much quicker because that's a much easier sell. You don't want to be doing baths and dressing and grooming on your grandmother. I know I don't. If you put that choice to me right now, I would have my checkbook out in a heartbeat and sign whatever you told me I needed to sign to get somebody to handle that for me. Um, your income level, especially with private pay, when we're out there marketing, we need to educate our referral sources on the type of clients we're looking for. So if we're building relationships with, say, our hospice nurse, we need to give her an idea of what she's looking for in that client's home to be able to tell if they can afford it. And I'm not telling you to have the hospice nurse spy and tell you, oh, we saw a safe or anything like that. Just you can tell from how a home is kept up and what types of things are around if that is a good candidate for private pay. Um, so you're going to have to educate your referral sources. As you guys are finding out, a lot of them still don't know the difference between home health and home care. And several referral sources, if they can't write a prescription for it, we may as well not exist because it just doesn't come to their mind oftentimes that the only way to make sure Mrs. Smith still takes her pills at night is if she has a caregiver there to remind her to take them. So the doctors forget that we are an integral part of making sure their patients don't get readmitted over something as simple as the patient was tired and couldn't cook, so they just opened another can of chicken noodle soup and saltine crackers and a full Coke on top of it. So now all of a sudden they've gained 3 or more pounds by the next morning and need to go back to the hospital because their salty diet overpowered their diuretics. Um, You can also look at tailoring your services for additional budgets. So with that, there are a lot of people right now in the industry in the home care space that are starting to look at again. It kind of fell out of not necessarily favor, but it was harder to do fractional care inside of independent living facilities. So you can offer care inside of those independent facilities at a lower cost to them than if that client was paying you for 6 to 8 hours of care. So you can bundle up several clients all at once and have one or two caregivers spend a few hours doing medication reminders, walking them to and from the dining hall, making sure they're getting their showers and things like that. Um, for those of you using WellSky, that's a feature called Community Care that is being upgraded as well, and it'll help you track all of that stuff, all those little mini tasks inside the system. Um, and then family dynamics. Um, Make sure you're paying attention to all the cues regarding family involvement in care decisions. You need to try to identify one, who the power of attorney is, but remember on power of attorney, if that client is not declared legally incapacitated, it does not matter that they gave their grandson the power of attorney. That power of attorney will only matter But you also want to look at family dynamics as far as once you have them as a client, you need to make sure the client specifies who in their family has the right to call and ask you about their care plan. Um, we had a situation with a client who lived in a nice lake house, and she only had one relative left, her niece. Her niece was not the power of attorney. She was not on good terms with her. She would call our office every single day and try to ask things about her aunt. And her aunt had already been very specific with us that her neighbor is the only one we had the right to discuss her care plan or anything else with. So make sure you're following your client's wishes when it comes to who you tell about their stuff. Um, and that's not just for HIPAA. It's just you don't want to ever put yourself in a situation where the client feels like you have compromised their trust or their trust with your agency. All right. And then marketing towards your client's needs. So understanding your client's needs are going to allow you to tailor your marketing messages and ensure that they're resonating with the correct audience and highlighting the services that are going to address their specific concerns. So, one thing you can do is talk about how perhaps your agency offers different levels of care. That's very similar to how assisted living set it up. You'll move into, say, a Brookwood or an Atria, and you'll start at level one care, or you'll maybe start at level two care if you've got a few more things going on that you need more help with certain ADLs or IADLs. Um, you can also highlight available shift links. Um, some people are out there trying to push like a 6 hour minimum, but that's very difficult to staff sometimes. And if you do something like a 4 hour minimum, what you can do is then have one caregiver that day on two different 4 hour shifts. So they're still getting the 8 hours that they need. And you were able to staff two clients. Because very often, a client, especially a brand new client, if they're told they have to move all the way up to 6 hours, that's a whole lot of care. They may be a little concerned about it. So consider offering them a lower shift length, like 4 hours. Um, Used to, you could get away with doing a 2 hour shift, but those are nearly impossible to staff, and you have to pay the caregiver a lot more. And if you do a 2 hour shift, you've got to charge the client a whole lot more because of that extra uh, hourly pay you're going to have to give your caregiver to do something so short. Um, And even if you have, say, a 6 hour minimum, if you've got a client that you feel like they're going to need more care and you just need to get the right caregiver in with them, you can make an exception and say, okay, for you, I will do three 4 hour shifts this week instead of the 6 hour minimum. So you can always make an exception to your contract with things like that. But it's better to not start off with such a long commitment to them, either monthly or weekly, that they get concerned about how much it's going to cost or if they actually want somebody in their house that often. Right. And again, look for your key decision makers. So the adult children of seniors are going to probably be your primary decision makers for your home care services. What the adult children are looking for, they want to know that if they put their parent or their grandparent with your agency, that their loved one is going to be safe, they're going to have a good quality of life, and that they're getting the right value for their money. Um, Highlight things such as your peace of mind, your personalized care, your reliability, and never always remember to bring up what you do for client and caregiver matching. For those of you using WellSky, you've got your matching criteria that helps you find somebody really quick using first come, first serve if you need it. So just highlight to them that you're going to give them a tailored care plan and you are going to work to find them a caregiver that they like. Um, Never promise them, though, that they are going to love the first caregiver they get. Tell them you will work to it, but you don't know if they're going to like the first caregiver. Maybe the client had a bad day, maybe the caregiver had a bad morning. They just might not get along that time. So promise them that you will work with them. But remember, the better matching for caregivers and clients, your clients happier and your caregivers happier because they know which clients they're going to, and their client feels more confident knowing they're only going to have three strangers in their house that they have to deal with. Um, And then this is just a little thing on as you guys are looking to grow, let's look to identify some gaps in your market so we can research for client needs. It's okay to survey your clients and ask them, you know, is there something you feel like you're missing out on? You know, did you recently come across several caregivers that have 20 years of experience with dementia and memory care? That's something you should highlight. That's a game changer out there. Some agencies have expanded into transportation services in addition to providing home care, where they make sure they get them to and from their doctor's appointments. Um, and I know as business owners, you all know this, but look at your competitors. Are your competitors offering some services that you don't have, but that you're completely able to do? Likewise, where are your competitors falling short? These are ways you can step up. So look for gaps. Is it weekend care? Language is huge right now. Um, and it always is. So there is up in Seattle an entire agency that they're bilingual. They speak Korean and they speak English. And that is their sole market are, Korean Americans in Seattle. So what languages are there in your area that you can make sure you're taking advantage of with caregivers to match with clients? Especially with a client, and I know I keep harping on dementia, but even if a client has lived here for, say, the past 40 years, they may revert back to their native tongue. So they may need a caregiver that is bilingual and speaks English and Tagalog or English and Russian. So, you know, down in Miami, we had an agency and Spanish was not their number one concern for caregivers. They needed caregivers that could speak Russian and Ukrainian because of the part of town they were in. So always look for things like that um, as well. Right. And then as y'all are looking to expand and test your new services, do pilot programs. Don't start everywhere, start small and see, you know, is there actually a demand for this service? You know, think about your feasibility. How much is this new proposed service going to cost you? What resources is it going to take? Are you going to have to hire a new administrator to oversee this? Or can you potentially promote a caregiver and make them a lead caregiver or a team lead and help them or to help oversee some of your newer caregivers as you grow? Um, and again, measure your success, y'all. With every single thing with a referral source it comes back to, I want you guys logging that so you know. Also, make sure you're showcasing at any events that you're there. You can get and rent a table. What I'll talk about on that as far as when you're doing events and you have the ability to rent a table or a booth, you can also work to find a partner who is, say, my favorite partners to work with are home health and hospice because all of their clients will need caregivers at some point. And so it's just a great, easy transition because we can easily support home health or hospice patients. Um, and with hospice, don't forget you can support the spouse as well. So a lot of times people only focus about the spouse or the partner who is on hospice, but they don't think about the surviving spouse. That surviving spouse is going to be needing things, everything from meal preparations to potentially help getting to the doctor to just straight up companionship because they've just lost somebody that they've spent the last 50 years with. So don't forget the surviving spouse when you're talking with hospice companies. Um, to my original point there, though, hospice companies and home health companies have a larger marketing budget. You guys can work with them to co-sponsor these events and save yourself a little bit of money, as well as if you find a particularly good home health organization or hospice that you work with, um, you can use them to start introducing you into places like hospitals that are ridiculously hard to get to because you've got to know exactly what floor to go to and where the little tiny office is that the discharge planners and social workers are working in because it is not easy to just walk into a hospital and find a social worker, but you can use your contacts at home health, skilled nursing, and hospice companies, as well as even to a lesser extent, assisted living to get into these hospitals and get access to the right people. Right. And then this is the last section. I know it's not all marketing, but again, I wanted to throw in some caregiver retention stuff as well. Um, so the first thing I'm bringing up, scheduling for caregiver time management. So I know I talked with Mariam. A lot of y'all are on WellSky, so that's why you'll see so much of this WellSky stuff here. Make sure you're setting up and using the Care Finder and match criteria in your WellSky account. That will save you a big headache. Um, and make sure that you are scheduling ahead. The farther out you can schedule, the more likely you are going to guarantee that your caregiver will pick you as their primary agency and only pick up extra shifts for the other agency they're working for. So the further out you schedule, the better off your caregiver retention is going to be as well, as long as you're not messing with that schedule too much. And also for you owners and you schedulers that are on the call, make sure that you're not allowing other admins to help the schedulers too much and change things around, because that'll be an excuse a lot of times. A different admin was on call and they're like, oh, I just wanted to help. And so then they've rearranged shifts for two or three different caregivers and it messes up something that they didn't even think about because the scheduler had it all planned out for the next month. Um, so make sure you and your schedulers are protective over your schedule. Yes, last minute call outs happen, but don't let a lot of other people go in there and make changes without your approval. Um, your company culture, guys, is huge. Um, a well run agency with good behavior, they're going to breed good behavior. And likewise, poor behavior is going to lead to poor discipline, which also is going to affect your not just your caregivers, but your clients. Um, this is something that'll be out at some point in the near future. It'll be completely released. WellSky's going to be working with Ava, and it's going to allow you to, um, right there within WellSky within Ava, promote and reward caregivers for good behavior. Things like clocking in correctly, leaving shift notes, clocking out on time. Um, all right. And then retention. So this is about discipline. Um, and why you don't always need to be you need to be always consistent with your discipline, but you need to make sure that you're also not seeing the best in people, but looking at, is this a situation that we can coach them on? If you're able to coach a caregiver on a minor infraction, but then they live up to it, they're like, yeah, you're right, Mariam, I did that wrong, but I will start clocking in on time every day, um, through the app instead of calling the office twice a week because my cell phone battery died. Um, they are going to become a better employee because you gave them the opportunity to change. And likewise, your other caregivers are going to see that you're not all about just firing caregivers. You will work with them. You know, there are various reports in WellSky you can pull to look at these things. Another thing I suggest you do is do a performance review with your caregivers. Um, look at their positives and not just their negatives. Look at places that they can improve on. Um, and then collaborate with your caregivers on how you can improve pain points. And there is a great report inside of WellSky's analytics called Single Caregiver Activities by Details, and it is a dashboard. And that is the best dashboard you'll find inside of WellSky for reviewing a caregiver's performance, when it comes time that a caregiver asks for a raise, or it's any time to review a caregiver. We also suggest that you set up like a first 100 days kind of plan with your caregivers so that you've got different points set up through those first 100 days where you've got a pretty good idea whether or not they're going to make it or not. And again, on this for your caregivers as well, we want to encourage and reward referrals. You can also set up a rewards program for your clients too, or even partners that refer clients to you. But especially on caregivers, whether they're referring clients or another caregiver. Um, the best caregivers are going to come by word of mouth, typically, rather than just applying for your job on Indeed, or my CNA jobs. by showing the caregivers that you're looking to build rewards for them and that you respect their time and stuff, you need to make sure that they understand the program and how they're going to get that reward. Like you need to make sure if you're going to reward them, say money, and they get $25 for a applicant that they referred that is hired, and then they will get another $25 in 90 days if that applicant is still with them or if that caregiver is still with you. They need to know they're not getting that $50 up front, that they'll get $25 up front and $25 after the probation period, or whatever it might be. Another thing on caregiver retention that I found useful when I was running an agency, we had a couple of things because I'm going to get off on a tangent here while we've got some time left, and that's almost my last slide. We had a food pantry available in our office that was open to all of our caregivers, all of our admins, and it was placed discreetly so that it was not just right in the front of the office where everybody could see them getting it. Um, we let them have access to that food pantry. We also had extra toiletries available that we kept under the bathroom sink in the office, and extra personal care products that we kept for them that they were able to use or take and have. Um, we would also, during the school year, have the invite the caregivers to bring their children, their grandchildren. We were never that picky on it. Bring them in with their report cards, and we would give them $5 for every A on the report card and a dollar for every B, or maybe $2 for a B and a dollar for a C. You can kind of work it out the way you want, but that showed the caregivers we cared about not only them, but their children as well. Likewise, at the beginning of the school year, we would stock up on paper and crayons, colored pencils, um, even a few backpacks, and all the other, tissues and random things you need for school supplies, so that for caregivers that didn't have a way to get that or couldn't afford to do all of that at Target or Walmart, they knew they could come there and get some extra school supplies. Um, so, there's are a couple of other things you can do to improve your caregiver retention. They're hopefully a little outside of the box. All right, y'all, and then that goes right back into our Q&A. Okay. Thank you, Mariam. Yeah, that's great. And you're completely right on the standby caregiver, Mariam. That is huge. Um, and also as you grow, you're gonna wanna have a standby caregiver for your weekends and your nights as well, um, that can help you so you don't lose those shifts. I'm sorry if I cut you off, Mariam.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey Tyler. Yeah, I was waiting for other people to ask questions, but it looks like people. Anyways, yeah. Thanks for the presentation. It was great. Yeah. So recently set up the agency, and sent the application to the California Department of Social Services, and we've gone through like the preliminary review where they look through our application and say it's complete. Now we're just waiting for our license. And so I'm just trying to get us ready to get going operationally. And so yeah, like you said, Well Sky is the platform to just jump on. And
I am a little biased because I used to work there, but we also ran our agency on it.
Okay.
Um, the other one, and Miriam, I hope if you're okay if I say there's another one out there. Um, I'm not married to Wellsky or anything, but okay. Thank you. I didn't want to say anything not supposed to. So um yeah. Um okay, gotcha. Yeah, Access Care is another software you might want to look into as well. I'm just going to type that here because there are two of them. I'm going to give you the one that I prefer. They are based out of Waco, Texas, but they've got a lot of people in Nashville, Tennessee as well. And it's another CR. It's another. Um, they call them agency management software. I prefer scheduling software, and it's going to work similar to WellSky. I will say WellSky's analytics are top notch. You can get more data from WellSky's analytics dashboards than about any other agency management platform out there. Another one we work with as well is SwiftOps. Um, Access Care is more similar to WellSky than SwiftOps is. SwiftOps will feel a little bit backwards in how things go. So if you've seen WellSky and you've seen Access Care, they're going to operate the most similarly to each other. Um, but then SwiftOps is another option for you to look at as well.
Okay. And then, in our case, we already have a few caregivers ready to start working. And, myself, I wasn't planning on being a caregiver, but I realized that it is important to have that flexibility. And so I'm working to get certified. And so, my question is, yeah, like how do we get our first customer or first client?
So you're going to have to get out there. I do recommend either you or somebody in your agency is a full-time marketer. You've got to make sure you're putting your boots on the ground out there and meeting with those referral sources. Um, and in the first little bit, it is going to be harder to get. I will tell you though, you can break in by doing things like so with Pruitt Health, for example, down here in the southeast, they're a large home health and skilled nursing agency or facility, and I was the only agency that answered the call at 5:30 on a Friday night right before a college football game the next morning, which in Columbia, South Carolina, that was a big deal. So nobody else is answering their phones. They were already off chilling for that night. I answered my cell phone. I drove over there myself. And just to your point, I sat with that client and their family myself for 2.5 hours until I could get a caregiver there. Um, and the fact that I showed up and went myself and stayed with the client, signed them on the spot, and didn't leave the client until I was relieved by a caregiver, um, that built a relationship with Pruitt Health for me. And to Mariam's point about the hospice nurse, Will, their admissions director, then took me to every hospital in Columbia and was using the codes and everything and getting me back there and getting me on a first name basis with the social workers and the discharge planners um, at places. I don't know if that completely answers your question, but hopefully that shows some of
Yeah,
it.
you said, get out there, and so, like, I guess at a high level, like, what does that mean? Do we, do I have to reach out to case managers at different um,
Yeah. So
hospitals, or what is that?
yeah. So your four primary referral sources you're going to want to work with are home health agencies, hospice agencies, skilled nursing facilities, and then you're going to want to try to break into a hospital. Those are the hardest to get into a hospital because they want to make sure, especially for new agencies, that we're still going to be around. So, to Miriam's point, don't tell them you'll be providing the care yourself. Don't lie, but um, make sure that you're using your other relevant experience as well. So, for example, sir, what did you do prior to getting into home care? It's okay to talk about your past experience when you're building those relationships with referral sources.
Okay. Okay, great.
And I've got a
That-
document I'm going to send Miriam. It's called Roles and Relationships at Referral Sources. And it's going to tell you all of the different referral sources that I recommend, as well as the people there that y'all need to meet at each referral source. And another thing you might hear me say or hear other people say in this space is to blanket your account. And so by that, I mean, when you go to one of these skilled nursing facilities, um, I want you to know the receptionist or the concierge, whatever title they give them. I want you to know their admissions person slash their marketer. I want you to know the administrator themselves. I even want you to, if you have a chance, to meet the chef. As you're touring these facilities, and that's the other way you get in the door, guys. Go up to assisted livings, go up to independent livings, and assisted livings are not going to be a great referral source. They will be very open to talking to you because their marketers love to talk, like all marketers do, but you guys compete directly with assisted living. Um, so the way you can kind of work with assisted living is I asked them if they were comfortable sharing their wait list with me and if I could provide care for people on their wait list so that they didn't move into a new facility that was being built down the street if that room would open quicker. Um, I also would work with assisted livings when their clients had long-term care insurance. They could start burning off part of their elimination period, which is basically the same thing as a deductible for health insurance, with us doing home care at 4 to 6 hours a day. That was way cheaper than them spending 90 days paying for assisted living out of pocket at $6,000 or $7,000 a month. So I would try to work with them on those fronts and show our value there. Um, the other value you can get from an assisted living is you can ask them once you've got a relationship, hey, do you have any caregivers that need extra hours? Because I've got hours I'd like to give people. And likewise, you can say, I've already got these great caregivers, but they're at 40 hours and I really can't, I don't have enough to give them overtime. Is there any way I can refer them to you so that they can pick up extra hours at your building? Um, and then I did see briefly that 1099 versus W-2 question as well. Um, in this business, I'm going to side firmly on W-2s. I've seen a lot of agencies get in trouble with going the contractor route. Um, Specifically, there was a large franchise that got in trouble for doing it that way. And it kind of got the Department of Labor and IRS really pinning down on the caregiving space as a whole. Um, because as soon as you schedule a caregiver, they can argue they're no longer a contractor because you told them they had to show up to Mr. Jones at 10 a.m. Um, so you're now dictating their schedule to them. Whereas on the safe side, to be on the safe side with 1099, they're supposed to be able to make their own schedules. Um, so that's where I would side on that. I know W-2s are more expensive, and to Miriam's point about trying to save a little bit of money, um, in the long road, you're going to be more protected from a business standpoint if your caregivers are employees. It also gives you control over their background checks and things like that.
Yeah, I still have a question. So I don't want to hog it. I'm so sorry. But a question I had is that um, when it comes to coming up with a care plan, I've seen different things where we need to either like work with the client, like get them signed and then come up with a care plan. But I've seen like another case with a different business that I talked to, where they said that the social workers will come up with a care plan and you just have to accept it, and like they're just looking for like an agency to accept the care plan. Like what's the proper like procedure, I guess?
It will depend on where that referral came from and how, if it's private pay or not. Like if you got that referral straight from a social worker at a skilled nursing or rehab facility or a hospital, follow the care plan they wrote. You can make some adjustments to it if you need to, but that's going to be your best place to start. Otherwise, when you're coming up with the care plan, and some states require you to have a nurse on site for the assessment. So if you're required to have a nurse, they will help you come up with a care plan as well. Um, we employed a person, one of our big roles, and I can also send you a link to the job descriptions in a home care agency as well, if that would be helpful for y'all. Just the general job descriptions. So we had a care coordinator, and we sent her out every time our marketer went to do an assessment, and it was her job to talk the family through what the care plan needs to be and to come up with what do you actually need us to do each shift. So they're probably not going to need a shower every single shift if they're seeing you 5 times a week. They're only going to need a shower 3 of those days. Um, but they're going to need you to cook meals every time. And you also want to make sure when you're doing these client intakes that you've got a vehicular service agreement that states whether or not your caregiver is allowed to drive the client in their vehicle, or in the caregiver's own vehicle. So that's why it's important to make sure you're doing your DMV checks. Um, you want to, because you don't want your caregiver driving a client around. It turns out they've got a poor driving record or no insurance. Um, no, and you were right. And especially here, I don't know if y'all can tell that I'm from the South with my accent or not. but we suggest all of our clients include those firearm clauses that state either it's got to be removed from the premises or it has to be locked in a safe or a gun cabinet where the caregivers have no idea what the combination is. But to Miriam's point, it's safer if you can just get the family to agree to remove the gun from the premises. That's going to be potentially a little harder fought in areas like the South and Midwest where hunting and stuff is a lot more pervasive than other parts of the country. The other thing, in addition to a firearm clause, I recommend you guys have in your contracts is a clause on valuables such as jewelry needing to be locked up as well. You don't want a Rolex to go missing and your caregiver to get blamed for it, and then your liability insurance to take the hit for it. Um, so just make sure they're locking up anything that can be seen as a valuable. Um, and also just be very particular on your medication boxes, especially if that client has opioids or other strong narcotics in the home. Make sure those are not somewhere that can be easily accessed. All right, I just made a note to email Mariam the my roles document. Um, thank you all so much for letting me join you tonight. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Tyler. This is great.
All right, thank you. Y'all have a great one, and I will maybe chat later. We'll see. So, thank you all.